background husband. I poured my wealth into the Croft family business, saving it from ruin. When Victoria was caught in a devastating car wreck, I stayed by her bedside, feeding her ice chips and managing the crumbling company single-handedly. When she finally recovered, she held my face in her hands and swore that I was the one person on this earth she would never, ever betray. But then Tristan came back. All it took was one whisper from him, a casual comment about a gruesome scene he'd watched on some historical HBO drama, for Victoria to shatter my legs and string me up from the vaulted ceiling of our Hamptons living room. For 3 days and 3 nights, I hung there. Parched, starved, and delirious with agony, I begged her to cut me down. She didn't even look up. She simply pulled Tristan into her lap, their bodies tangled together on the Italian leather sofa, right in front of me. If you hadn't taken advantage of my vulnerability to force me into marriage, I wouldn't be in a position where I can't give Tristan my last name, she sneered, her eyes entirely devoid of the woman I thought I knew. You framed him. You sent him into exile. Now that he's back, it's time you paid your debts. When it was over, my spirit was utterly broken. I dragged what was left of myself to my older sister, collapsing at her feet. I lost, Caroline, I choked out, pressing my forehead against the cold hardwood. I was blind. Please, just get me out of here. By the time they finally cut me down, the pain had long since mutated into a cold, suffocating numbness. My body collapsed onto the Persian rug like a sack of broken porcelain, the slightest twitch of my fingers sending electric shocks of agony up my spine. The heavy, metallic stench of blood hung thick in the air. I forced my eyes open, catching sight of the dark, pooling stain beneath me, soaking into the hardwood. The rope burns on my wrists and ankles had cut straight down to the bone. The blood had already begun to coagulate into black crusts. Victoria, he stinks. Tristan pinched his nose, putting on an exaggerated show of gagging. Victoria looked down at my pale, wretched form. For a fraction of a second, a flicker of hesitation, maybe even pity, crossed her features. But it was instantly snuffed out by Tristan's next words. I bled this much too, you know, he murmured, his voice trembling with practiced fragility. When the man he hired violated me, the temperature in Victoria's eyes plummeted. Her voice hardened into absolute ice. Drag him out to the patio, she ordered the guards. Hose him down with ice water. Let him wash off the filth. My body began to violently tremble on instinct, but I bit down on the inside of my cheek, refusing to let a single plea slip past my lips. This was all because of a TV show. Tristan had been watching a bloody fantasy epic and mentioned how thrilling it was to see a traitorous general strung up by his broken legs on a castle wall. And just like that, Victoria ordered her security team to hoist me up in the center of our home. I had fought back, screaming in sheer disbelief. Are you out of your mind, Victoria? I am your husband. But she had just held Tristan closer, looking at me like I was something scraped off the bottom of a shoe. This is what you owe him, she had said coldly. If you hadn't orchestrated that setup to ruin his name, he never would have suffered so much before finding his way back to me. You are ruthless, Nigel. You did whatever it took to force me to marry you. I had stared at the stranger wearing my wife's face. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of waking up beside her, holding her, building a life together, annihilated by a few whispered lies from a ghost of her past. He's lying to you, I had rasped, my voice tearing. Have you forgotten the security footage? You saw him stealing the financial data with your own eyes. Victoria's lips had pressed into a thin, white line. You manipulated the situation to force his hand. Tristan had buried his face in her neck, shooting me a wicked, Victoria's smirk over her shoulder. Nigel only did it because he loves you so much, Victoria. I don't blame him. It's just, the things they did to me in exile, it still hurts so much. That single, hollow lie had been the catalyst. Victoria pulled him tighter, her protective instincts weaponized against me. Break his legs first, she instructed the guards, her tone chillingly casual. Then string him back up. The general on television had broken legs. I wanted to be exact. Panic had surged through my veins. I scrambled backward, trying to get to my feet, but 2 massive bodyguards flanked me, driving my shoulders into the floor. A third man walked toward me, a solid aluminum baseball bat gripped in his hands. No. Victoria, snap out of it. I screamed, thrashing wildly. But it was useless. Crack. Blinding, white-hot agony exploded from my right leg. A guttural scream ripped through my throat. The bat had connected squarely with my knee, shattering the joint. He sounds pathetic, Victoria complained, pinching the bridge of her nose. Gag him. Keep going. A filthy rag was shoved down my throat, muffling my screams into pathetic, suffocating whimpers. Crack. My left knee caved. The sheer volume of the pain ripped my consciousness away for a few merciful seconds. When I came to, I was suspended in the air. My shattered legs dangled uselessly beneath me, every microscopic sway of the rope sending shockwaves of nauseating pain through my pelvis. And there they were, sitting on the sofa directly in front of me, curled up together, watching television. Occasionally, they would lean in to share a slow, lingering kiss. Tristan had intentionally cranked the volume on the TV. The canned laughter from the sitcom echoed off the high ceilings, creating a grotesque, mocking soundtrack to my torture. Are you happy now, Tristan? She asked softly. He wrapped his arm around her waist, whispering something against her ear. She let out a beautiful, ringing laugh, the exact same laugh she had given me 3 years ago when she woke up in the hospital and saw I hadn't left her side. They began to make out on the couch, completely absorbed in one another, as if the dying man bleeding out above their heads simply didn't exist. Tears slid silently down my cheeks, soaking into the gag. My heart didn't just break, it felt like it was being fed through a shredder. The shock of the freezing water hitting my skin was violently abrupt. It felt like 1,000 needles driving into my flesh all at once. The initial piercing cold gave way to a deep, burning agony. I couldn't even scream, I could only grind my teeth together, letting the sensory overload tear my fading sanity into shreds. Victoria stood on the edge of the patio, her gaze detached as she watched my lips turn a bruised, sickly purple. Tristan pressed himself against her side, his face glowing with sheer, sadistic pleasure. Victoria gestured to the staff. Bring another bucket. Victoria, I think he's actually dying, Tristan murmured, coating his voice in a thick layer of mock concern. Should we call a doctor? No, Victoria replied flatly. He won't die that easily. He's a cockroach. He probably likes the attention. I turned my head, my whole body convulsing with shivers, and forced out a gravelly whisper. Victoria, what did I ever do to deserve this? From the day I married you, haven't I given you enough? She brushed off the question like a nuisance. Do you honestly think playing the devoted husband cancels out the years of hell Tristan endured because of you, Nigel? I managed to lift my head, desperately wanting to scream that I had nothing to do with Tristan's exile. But the absolute void of empathy in her eyes killed the words in my throat. Suddenly, Tristan's eyes lit up. Oh, in the show, the general was forced to drink urine, too. I want to see that. Anger burned through my shivering frame. No. But Victoria merely offered a cynical smirk and waved a hand at the bodyguards. My pupils dilated in pure horror as the men stepped forward, unzipping their pants. The warm, metallic, putrid stench rained down over me. One of the men pried my jaw open, forcing the foul liquid down my throat. I thrashed wildly, but the catastrophic pain in my legs kept me paralyzed on the concrete. I collapsed onto my stomach, dry heaving violently. My stomach, already hollow and burning from starvation, cramped so hard it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I retched again, and suddenly, a dark spray of blood spewed from my mouth onto the patio stones. Victoria's eyes locked onto the blood. Her pupils contracted, and her foot twitched forward, an involuntary instinct to help. But Tristan casually leaned against her shoulder. You know, when Nigel's thugs beat me, I threw up blood for days. No one called a doctor for me, either. He's lying. I had never hired anyone to touch him. But Victoria swallowed the lie whole. The brief flash of humanity vanished, replaced by a freezing glare. He made a mess again, she said. Keep the ice water coming. I genuinely wanted to ask her, what had our 3 years together actually meant? I had sacrificed everything for her, stripped myself of my own identity to be her anchor, and this was my reward. The ice water hit me again, flooding my nose and throat. The cold shocked my nervous system, but it was nothing compared to the absolute devastation in my chest. I glared at her through bloodshot eyes, my gaze burning with a hatred so profound it felt holy. Victoria, I want a divorce. The sheer force of my rage sent my heart into overdrive, and my vision